So I was debating as to whether or not I actually wanted to make a follow-up video for the Melt video talking about King Protea because she's also on Reddit for the whole Seraph revival thing we got over here on the NA version of the game. But then I looked back and saw I have not done a singular video on King Protea in 3 years. And I do talk a lot about her on stream and in other videos when I talk about, solo and survival units. And I was like, you know what? I should probably go ahead and do a servant evaluation for King Protea as well. Now, I do want to go ahead and preface and say that I have a slight bias against her style of gameplay just because the way that King Protea likes to play is to stack max HP and stack NP damage resistance so she gets really big, really beefy, and it can essentially just kind of face tank through whatever the enemies are going to throw her way. I mean, outside of an impossibly strong NP, getting caught a little too early, or just an insane turn of crits, she's probably going to be fine. She's going to have enough HP and enough NP resistance to kind of just force her way through anything that comes her way, but that's a little too slow for someone like me. I'm not a huge fan of playing like that. If you guys, again, have come out to any of the streams, which Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm doing FGO at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, y'all will see that I kind of just run into bosses and I just want to slam my head into them and just win as quickly as possible. Now, sometimes I can have a little bit of patience, but King Protea, for me personally, does require a little too much patience. So I do have to at least acknowledge that for me personally, I have a slight bias against the style of gameplay, but I also can't argue against the results. Being able to stack 4,000 max HP every single turn and an 8% NP damage resistance that gets up to 10 stacks can get a little bit ridiculous, on top of the fact that you can kind of cash in, as it were, for a lot of your growth HP stacks to give yourself NP and extra damage. Not to also mention that, like Melt Lilith, who we talked about yesterday, she's also still an alter ego servant, meaning that if you need her to kind of just stall and beat up a rider, a caster, an assassin, and maybe even a berserker, although I think that kind of goes against her style of soloing, but even in those cases, you can bring out King Protea and just have her effectively stall the enemy until they're dead. And so the results, I do think, kind of speak for themselves, in that she is a very strong servant if you want to bring her to CQ content. But that's not the only spot she's good in, as I should be showing in either the first or second gameplay. You can also use her for farming if you want. If you go ahead and max out the append skill and you have the correct CEs, you actually can bring her to go farming, and her damage isn't, I guess, the worst for farming, I suppose, but definitely not going to be one of your go-tos, no power mods, no really ramping damage or anything along those lines. It's certainly not going to have her be the best unit for farming, but the fact that she also has that as a plus is always going to be good. If a unit nowadays can be really good in CQs and also just has the perk of being able to farm, or vice versa, they're a good farmer but they're also good in, CQ content, like say Summary Buki who's coming out, that's always going to be a plus. That's always going to be something that helps them age very well. And I guess in King Protea's case, it's not something that you're really bringing her for, but with future buffs, it might be something that's easier for her to do. So for one, really good into CQs, and also has the capability of farming if you want to invest in her. It's just, again, I think you have to be looking for a certain style of gameplay to really enjoy what King Protea is doing, because you gotta understand that as soon as you go into a fight using King Protea as your main DPS or solo unit, that you're going to be there for quite a while, because for her to start showing her strengths, you're just gonna have to sit through her building up those growth stacks. And again, something that can be a little bit frustrating in my use of King Protea is that she can get taken down a little early on, before she starts getting excessively bulky to where, even if the enemy's throwing wayward crits your way, or even starts stacking all of that NP damage bonuses, and kind of making herself really tanky even against enemy NPs, that she can get caught a little early on. Which is something that I see people that really pine over King Protea and say how good she is at soloing and everything don't really talk about. The fact that you can have some really annoying runs, or even a series of runs, where you just get caught early on and you're just not having a great time. Granted, with things like CQs being about 5 AP on average, it's not that much of a hassle, but it can be a little grating. I've been there. fighting a boss over and over and over again, and you just keep getting blasted time and time again, whether it be in FGO, Dark Souls, Dokkan. I've been there. It's not a fun thing no matter what game you're playing, and for that to kind of be in FGO, I can understand is a little bit frustrating, but I do think she has her value. Now, the problem is that she's on rate up right now with Melt, and I think if you should go for one of the two units, I would definitely say go for someone like Melt, because not only is Melt also really good for these CQ-oriented content, but I think she's going to be a little bit quicker in taking them down, meaning you're not hanging out with the boss for these extended periods of time, you know, going on for 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 turns, where the bosses are usually going to be packing some annoying mechanic, and the longer you're in there, the worse the fight's going to go for you. So it's why I really can't say, oh, you gotta go for King Protea, even though her capabilities and her strengths in challenge quests are really strong. I just don't see a reason to really prioritize her over, say, any other solo unit. You know, I think you still get the same effective value, not even with Melt, who's on rate up with her right now, but even with people like Shi Huang, who's a very good defensive soloer, Walter, who kind of bridges the gap between being an offensive solo servant and a defensive solo servant, and then there's someone like Super Orion, who you could use, who's a very heavily offensive solo servant. I really don't see the whole point in going for her specifically unless you really just like your Sakura faces, and that's kind of just my take after using King Protea for a decent bit. Again, I kind of had to force myself out of my comfort zone a little bit to use King Protea, because I'm not someone who likes to sit in a fight for excessively long periods of time, although sometimes in the cases, say, like with Bargus and stuff, I can maybe kind of force myself to do it. But with King Protea, it's really good, but it's not like the best thing you could be doing. So if you're asking me from like a meta perspective, hey, is King Protea worth rolling for? I would probably tell you no. You could definitely save your Saint Quartz for summer, you could save your Saint Quartz for anniversary, and get more value out of one of those units. But if you do like CCC, if you are a Sakura face enjoyer, if you just like the Sakura 5 in general, then it can get you some nice return on your value as a servant, that you will get to use her when you're going into CQs. Just kind of know what you're getting into. Again, like I talked in some of the other servant evaluations, even with someone like Melusine, I was able to find some flaws in that, you know, there's no power mods, there's nothing with ramping damage that she has. Don't feel it's like a personal attack on King Protea, you know, it's just, I feel as though you could be doing better things with other servants if you want to use them as solo units. But I can't deny that if you do want to use King Protea, she'll be very good in CQ content. She will get very tanky, and as long as she doesn't die early on, she'll be able to see you through to the end. And again, the fact that you can use her to farm is a bit hilarious. I don't think it's the best thing you could be doing, but again, very funny that you could get at least that value out of her. And hey, an alter ego that can farm, that means any rider, assassin, caster, Zerk nodes are kind of cleared for you. So that's also, I suppose, a little bit of an upside for her. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure you leave a like on the video and you subscribe to the channel for that daily FGO content. And again, make sure you come out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for those FGO streams. I'm toying around with the idea of doing stuff like Star Rail and Arc Nights on Tuesdays and Thursdays if I have the time, but we'll see about that. Let me not ramble. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace, late guys.